Okay, so I'm sure that by now everybody is more than aware of President Joe Biden's campaign on misinformation and its spreading. He has constantly uh, stumbled through speeches addressing the issue of the spreading of misinformation, including in a recent speech uh, where he continued to explain that we must all work together to end misinformation, the spreading of misinformation, which continues to divide family, friends, and country, to put in his words. Uh, but to those of us who know better, it's a little funny uh, coming from Joe because, as many know, Joe is quite into the misinformation himself, and as is the media that does everything in their power to defend Joe and everything that he does by using misinformation in many cases. Along with Joe, the media, not to point the finger, but uh, just to include some names, as up on the screen here: CNN, the New York Times, Washington Post, they all do it. BuzzFeed, Politico, they are all very adamant in spreading anything that makes Joe Biden look good and everything that he has done, especially pertaining to the pandemic and the coronavirus response, which Joe has nearly nonstop blasted the Trump admin. He did it back during the presidential debates leading up to them, during all the campaigning and the primaries and the running, and now as president, he continues to blast the previous admin's response to the coronavirus pandemic. However, what Joe and the media fail to tell us and tell you is that Joe's response has almost to no actual difference or uh, uniqueness to that of Donald Trump's response. In fact, Joe has built off of or continued reinvent, if you want to call it, the Trump admin's plan, their response. Now, of course, they will never say that, and they will word it and try to make it look as best as possible that that is not what they are doing because they don't have a plan. So all they do is more or less pick up where Trump left off. Uh, Joe repeatedly said that there were no vaccines under Trump when that is quite the contrary. There were millions of doses on the way and being made and shipped. And there are pictures of Joe himself being vaccinated under Trump's administration, which directly contradicts the things he's saying now. Of course, we know Joe, his memory is not the best. He tends to contradict what he says often. But nonetheless, it's a pretty big contradiction. The other thing is, back to the constant blasting of Trump's response. Joe's response has picked up on or picked up where Trump left off. He basically built off it, uh, almost copy it, if you will, just ordering more vaccines and trying to distribute them as best as they can. That's a very vague description. Obviously, he has added some things to it. Again, that's where I say he built off of it. Um, but the other thing is, he lies about the numbers, or not necessarily him, but the media lies about the numbers. More specifically, Joe and the media like to talk about this virus is still running rampant, and we must all wear masks and get vaccinated, uh, to stay safe. But that's not necessarily the case. And so a CDC official has stated that the media has largely not covered important revelations relating to the virus, such as a reduction in cases by 77% over the past 6 weeks. So that's a pretty big deal that no one really talks about. And if anyone remembers uh, our great Vice President Harris, she even stated that, going back to Biden's plan for coronavirus and the picking up where Trump left off, Harris uh, told Axios co-founder Mike Allen there was, quote unquote, there was no stockpile of vaccines. Of course, we know this is not entirely true, as Trump's administration had kicked out a very good number of these vaccines. While Trump had less time to work on the distribution, there was in fact a plan laid out, uh, which I have here. I have pulled up, which it's not on the screen, but I'll read it to you. It is the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and basically, it's a vague outline of the Trump admin's plan on distribution. So basically, uh, Trump started with, engaging with and getting in touch with state, territorial, and local partners and other stakeholders and the public to communicate public health info around the vaccine and promote vaccine confidence and uptake. So he was actively promoting this vaccine, which we're all going to have to take at some point, or at least the vast majority. So during the campaigning, when Harris stated that she would not take the vaccine if Donald Trump said to take the vaccine, you can see how this would be detrimental to the idea that we all need to take the vaccine. Of course, now obviously she's shouting and screaming that we need to take the vaccine. But anyway, on to the next bullet point or next part of the outline of the Trump admin's plan. Uh, distribute the vaccines immediately upon the granting of emergency use authorization and biologics license application. So, using a transparently developed phased allocation methodology, and CDC has made vaccine recommendations. So that was basically the next part. After these vaccines are made and contact has been made with these local leaders and officials, which is the way to do it because you have to engage with the local leaders at a time like this. The federal government cannot do all of this. The best way to distribute this stuff and get this stuff around is getting in touch with your local leaders, like Ron DeSantis in Florida. He has done a very good job of this. He has allowed his local leaders, his mayors, uh, people like that, his sheriffs, what have you, take charge in a lot of these senses. Schools included. Actually, in Florida, schools are open unless they have an excuse to be closed. But long story short, he's left it up to his more local leaders. So this was a big part of the Trump admin's plan, which is important. You have to have something like that. Whereas the Biden administration is mostly use the federal power. We need to push this. Uh, so the next part of the layout was ensure the safe administration of the vaccine. Obviously, that would be the next step. We start administering it. We get it. We get the shot into people. Essential workers, obviously, going to be the first ones, and then following them, the elderly, and then after that, so on and so forth. Uh, Along with this would be the last step of monitor the necessary data from the vaccination program through an information technology system capable of supporting and tracking distribution, administration, and other necessary data. So, administer the vaccine and then monitor it. Collect the necessary data after administering it. And that's important because they need to see how well this vaccine works, who it affects best, who it affects worse, negative effects, positive effects, the whole wide range of things. So Biden has campaigned a lot on the fact that Trump had no real plan with the vaccine, uh, saying all the way, pushing things so far as to say that Trump did not have a vaccine, which we all know he did, but also saying he had no real plan to distribute this thing when it did come out, which, uh, contrary to what Biden says, the Department of Health and Human Services had his entire outline, and it's published online. Anybody can look at it. All you simply have to look up Trump administration releases COVID-19 vaccine distribution strategy, and it will be right there. It's right on their website. You can look at the whole thing. You can read everything they worked out, everything they planned, and a general outline of the distribution plan. It's all there for you to see. So this plays into the uh, fake information, the misinformation campaign that is huge in our media right now. So despite what these news outlets and the government, the executive branch, legislative branch, tell you, uh, dig, look into things for yourself. You should always look into things before yourself. Never buy into this stuff uh, upon first reading or hearing or seeing. Always dig for information because it will be there. You just have to look in the right places. So, whenever Biden talks about the Trump administration not having a plan, not knowing how to distribute this thing, and even going as far as saying Trump did not have it, it's simply not true. And if you dig, you will know that. You will know the details of the situation. So, the big lesson in this is look for the information. Look more into things. Look at both sides of things. Uh, the misinformation campaign that is running amok in the media is a pretty sizable threat, a really mounting threat, because it is leading people to believe things that are simply not true. It is leading people to believe, especially this day and age, that Democrats good, Biden good, we're for the people, Republicans bad, Republicans want to overthrow democracy. You know the spiel. They're using the Capitol riots, all of that. But that's just it. The misinformation campaign is the whole idea is just that: spread misinformation and make people believe what they are saying, make people believe the truth that they want you to believe. Always look for more information on things.